raised a question about one of the raised issues that the Chamber has some position papers on their various education issues, and one is our return on investment in education. Of course, that gets into the whole education funding issue. We know that most of our school districts across the state, because of the billions of dollars that have been cut in education, they have been forced to increase class size, give teachers furloughs, cut back on the 180-day school calendar, or sometimes multiple of those strategies. But there is good news on the horizon. We're hearing that there may be some excess revenues that will be coming up soon. The question for our candidates is, with the possibility of those revenues, where would you recommend using any additional dollars for education? We'll start with the middle two people and work out this time.
The Smarter Funding, Better Outcomes report, I admire and congratulate the work done on that. When it comes to funding of schools, moving things back to a zero-based budget type of approach and looking and say, what are our needs moving forward? Right now, we have an industrial age school system for the information age. How things are done, how things should be done, the teaching, being able to have facilitation versus lecturing, being able to use technology. And I'm glad to hear that there's more technology being approved to help all 180 districts. Really looking at how we reallocate that money is really the first step. And so by having that pupil-based funding, the SPB, the student-based budgeting done, that allows for the flexible frameworks, the local control. How does that student need to be taught? How can Americas, can they redesign the way that they do their school district to be able to help have the school itself be a collaboration center and a center for learning as opposed to a traditional school. If you look at the difference between the school district down there and say Fulton County, there are some stark differences in performance and student readiness when they graduate, if they graduate. So first of all is fixing how the funding formula is done, identifying where the key elements need to be had. I mean, I'm a very significant believer in technology as a tool, as an enabler. I've seen what's possible, and it makes me about cry knowing that we're not able to implement some of the from pre-K on up. If anybody has a 4 to 7-year-old right now, it's amazing what can be done, what can be learned. The fact that our learning is not personalized, people are sitting there basically vegetating for a couple of weeks until they move on to the next subject. It's extremely inefficient. As a Republican, I like to fix that. But as a parent, and I really would like to see really this overhaul on how we approach funding in the information age. It's just the resources and the capabilities now are, it's a stark contrast just from 10 years ago.
Thank you. I'm going to disagree with a little bit of the premise of the question. Well, the question is what would I do with additional money, so I'll answer that, but a little bit of the preamble to that. I think you stated that we've been cutting education, and I disagree with that. I see Kelly McCutcheon in the audience, and I'm with Georgia Public Policy Foundation, and I link to their website about the funding disclosure in the state. We've had an increase for many years. We had a little blip during the recession, but we had a lot of federal stimulus dollars that came in. So generally our districts get more money every year. The trend line is up there. That is not up for debate in my opinion. But what I think the point was being made is that we have this horrific funding formula, the QBE funding formula, which represents a yearly unfulfillable promise, okay? So it is not connected to revenue or reality in any way, shape, or form. It simply is a formula where you have 19 different funding categories that have to be dealt with over a 6-period day, and you've got to have armies of administrators to deal with the compliance issues and how to work that. So it is very costly to administer that to begin with. It then is not really funding attached to the child, which is a huge reform, and I support the chamber in their efforts to reform funding. So that's a big part of what I've been reading in the position piece that I got from you guys, and I commend you on that. I want to work with you as your state school superintendent to do that, to have real per pupil funding that follows the child. We have had increases, but we have not fulfilled this unfulfillable promise of QBE, because it says that you should be getting some huge amount per district, but of course it's not connected with revenue. So the legislators come in, they then have to say, well, how do we connect what we can fund based on the revenue? And that's reality. The chamber certainly knows that. The chamber certainly understands that you've got to match your expenses with your revenue. So that is, I think, something we need to look at when we reform QBE. So we have additional money. What would I do with that? Well, what I would do is we need to reward success rather than subsidize failure. No matter what you do in Georgia right now, you just keep getting your state funding. You want to fail in perpetuity, you get your check. That has to stop. Other states have rules where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. They have rules where they're doing that. And in Tennessee, they formed an achievement district where perpetually underperforming schools can be placed and dealt with. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can be doing much better than we are by taking on some of our neighbors' accountability standards and methodologies and integrity measurements. But we need to put to rest that our funding has been cut, because it hasn't. I would, again, invest in success for some of our most vulnerable children. I would lower class size, because we know that that can help, especially in the early years. So that would be what I want to do first with the money, make sure that we can reduce class sizes, particularly for our most vulnerable students.
Thank you, Nancy. As Nancy said, we know that the QBE formula is complex, difficult, and we need to revamp that. I think if I were given the extra funding, personally, it's not mine. The first thing I have to do is understand where that funding is coming from and do an assessment with my team to find out. If I'm your state school superintendent, I've got to do an assessment and find out what is the best use for those dollars. And after figuring that out, then we can get to work and making sure that those dollars are funneled to the right places. I mean, we all have great ideas of where money where money can go and how effective it can be, but it's not always money. Money's not always the answer. I've found in my experiences, we do the best with what we have, and you can overachieve by being innovative and understanding what things need to be done. So again, to me, let's make an assessment of where that money needs to go, and then we're going to give it its best use.
I've seen that a lack of money can be a problem, but money itself cannot solve the problems that we have. If it could, then APS would be our top performing school district, and it's not, because they receive so much more per pupil than any of the other school districts. When I went to the House and Senate Education Subcommittee listening sessions throughout the state, that's what everybody was talking about. They've cut days from the school year, they have teacher furlough days, and so bare minimum, to be competitive, we need to have 180 days, and in Fayette County, that's what last year we didn't have. We have 177. This year I made sure we had 180. That was a non-negotiable. They need that time, that instructional time. One thing that really needs to happen is our whole testing model needs to change, because right now we don't even get an accurate report of student achievement. The report is convoluted. We used to get the school report card that indicated how our students were doing directly, but now it's not even calculated here in Georgia. We have to send those scores off to the U.S. Department of Education, have them calculated, and put all kinds of other factors into our school grades. And some of those are pretty suspect. They want to measure progress, but they picked a test that doesn't measure progress. The CRCT doesn't measure progress. It can't measure progress, but somehow they've calculated progress off of that test. It doesn't make any sense. Testing needs to be fixed.
Okay, I am proud of you. We got through 3 already. Let's squeeze in, if you can take 30 seconds each. We've heard there's a lot of things in Georgia we need to fix. We heard this week that Georgia ranks 14th in the nation by Students First with a number of metrics. We heard last week with quality counts, independent organizations saying Georgia ranks 17th. We're getting better, but there's a lot we still need to improve on. But take 45 seconds. What's a good thing in Georgia you want to make sure we hold on and continue to focus on? Let's start here and go down.
I think the best thing we have in Georgia are our parents, our students, and our teachers, the involvement that we have at the local level. When we get parents to be involved, and we get students who want to work hard and teachers who love teaching, that's gold right there. That's everything in education. And when we take parents out of the picture, we take them out of the equation, and we say you can't have any say in your standards, you can't have any say in what happens at your school, it's all going to be decided by Arnie Duncan. That's not working. So our parents, our teachers, and our students, they're the best.
I echo that, and also working with Georgia Tech and Georgia State and UGA for centers of excellence for innovation and education, kind of continuing the move that some districts have done to our technology, taking that in back to the state, leveraging that, making that distribution available to the rest of the state. I'm really encouraged by what's happening with the attachment to PeachNet and to be able to increase the bandwidth at the schools. I mean, technology is not a panacea, but it sure is a very effective tool.
Well, I would say Amendment 1, the passage of Amendment 1 was a terrific victory for kids and taxpayers in our state. So that's the amendment that let us continue to have state chartered schools. And in general, the move towards educational freedom, we have a long way to go there. Other states, Louisiana and so on, are doing better, but that's a consistently conservative principle. And I support that. So those are some really great developments. You've got an awesome chamber and an awesome superintendent race. So those are awesome things as well.
I'm going to echo a little bit what Mary said down here. The overwhelming support that we get from our business leaders, from our communities, and our parents and students, that has to be the driving force. As I see it, as we move forward, we have to make sure that each one of the folks in this room, it's incumbent upon us. They're our future. They're our economic impact as we move forward. It is incumbent upon us to get involved and stay involved in the education of our kids. And I think that's one of the great things I've seen as I've embarked upon this office.
How about a round of applause for this panel?